Welcome back, willkommen zurück. This is gonna be a duolingual presentation, first English, then German. That's why I'm switching to my English-German version. Yes, we are very proud as Germans that we talk English too. And I'm proud to have a native English speaker first. And Joel Dalleroy, who's presenting us a movement which is going to ask a question, why, instead of having individual problems, having common solutions. Independence Unites, about the freelancer right movement. Joel Dalleroy.
Hello. So I'm going to do three things in the 10 minutes that I have to talk to you. I'm going to introduce the freelancers' rights movement and explain why it's happening. And then I'm going to give you some inspiring examples from around the world. And to end with, I'm going to launch a new platform which is dedicated to pushing the movement forward. So first of all, according to conference data, 1/3 of you are freelancers. Now, we all know that the Republica audience is a bit ahead of the trends, but what we see and observe here generally does filter out to the wider audience. So I'm going to make a prediction, and that is that just like the Republica audience, in the near future, a significant proportion of the workforce will be freelancers. And this is already happening. So here's some numbers to illustrate that. In the EU, we have 8.56 million freelancers, which make up about 4% of the workforce. And in the US, we know there's 16.9 million freelancers, and that's roughly 10% of the workforce. Now, there are many people who think that these numbers are far too conservative because they don't include people who work part-time as freelancers. And there are some predictions that up to 40% of the US workforce could be freelance by the year 2020. That's huge. That's a major shift for societies and for individuals, and we better be ready for it. So, to the average freelancer working on the laptop in a crowded cafe or co-working space, their situation might seem to be the accidental confluence of unstoppable factors. But I'd like to argue that the rise of the freelancing workforce is in fact due to three push and pull factors, some of which are not in our control, but the majority of these factors are very much within our control and can be changed and improved. So let me step through how we got here. The first, of course, is technology, and we all know that advances of technology have made it possible for us to work anywhere. And we all do jobs now that are knowledge-based and can be done online, rather than manufacturing and production. But technology is only part of the story. The rise of the freelance workforce is actually a direct result of an ideological project to create a gray zone of employment activity which is outside the protections of labor laws. And we can trace this back to the election of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan in the 70s and in the 80s. And of course, they were inspired by an ideology of individualism, which was revealed in Thatcher's famous quote that there's no such thing as society. So they set about destroying the power of the trade unions and dismantling any kind of, or a majority of the labor laws that had protected people for decades. And we still live with their legacy today. I would in fact argue that we're actually experiencing more Thatcherism today than they did in the 80s through the reforms in the European austerity programs. So the other push factor comes from the corporate world. Companies are desperate to find ways to reduce costs and to increase their profits. And one of the biggest costs on any company's books is, of course, employment labor, personnel. It's expensive to employ staff. It's not just the cost of actually employing them, it's all the social costs associated, and then the costs of officing them and equipping them. And until recently, you didn't really have any choice. If you're a company and you wanted to grow, you just had to bear these costs. But now, thanks to the neoliberal reforms introduced by Thatcher and Reagan, and thanks to the explosion in technology, companies have an option. They can go to the freelance workforce. And if you have any doubt about the intentionality of this, here's a quote that comes directly from the head of IBM's human capital management, a man named Tim Ringo. And he was talking about a plan that IBM has called Working Liquid, where they are going to turn their workforce of 400,000 people into a small core staff of just 100,000 who are going to be overseeing an army of external contractors who are going to bid for each internal task. And of course, he said this, he said there would be no building costs, no pensions, no healthcare costs, and making huge savings. So that kind of company structure could become the norm. So that's how we got here. Technology, ideology, and corporate squeezing. So is this a problem? Isn't freelancing great? You get to be your own boss. You can work when and where you like. And if you're highly skilled and clever, you can actually end up earning more as a freelancer than you can as an employee in some cases. And this is reflected in the surveys of freelancers, and it shows that they show over and over again that the vast majority of freelancers would not want to return to life as a regular employee. But of course, there are downsides to being a freelancer. You never know when your next contract's going to come up. You have to take care of your own pensions and healthcare costs. You aren't paid for preparation time. And you don't enjoy long fought for benefits like sick pay or holidays or parental leave. And as far as those decent pay rates are concerned, I challenge you to think of a future where almost half the workforce are freelancers. The laws of supply and demand tell us pretty clearly what's going to happen in those circumstances. And we're already seeing this with the rise of websites like 99 Designs, where you have to submit an entire finished portfolio without ever knowing if you're ever going to get the job. Or task farming sites where the lowest bidder usually wins. You see, the fear is that we're about to head into a Hobbesian employment market where each individual is at war with every other, undercutting each other on price and living with few social benefits. Governments are going to keep increasing that freelancing gray zone by reducing employment protections and cutting social benefits. And because freelancers are disconnected individuals with no collective voice, we're not going to have any say in the shape of these policies. Now, remember how I showed you that the freelancing conditions today have actually come about through decisions made in the past? Well, in the same way, the future of freelancing can be shaped by freelancers today and made more positive, with a little bit of cohesion and some political pressure. So that's the cue to start talking about the freelancers' rights movement, which is a social and political quest to protect and improve the conditions of freelancers everywhere. So the idea is to try and make sure that the upsides of freedom and flexibility are not outweighed by the downsides of high personal costs, shrinking social safety nets, and downward wage pressure. So the freelancers' rights movement is not so much a single organization. It's a loose coalition of different groups around the world. And it's more like the Occupy movement than, say, a trade union with branches in different countries. The groups have got all different outlooks, and some of the outlooks are actually, ideologically, they clash a little bit, but the groups are united in uniting freelancers, and that is the first step to achieving anything. So what I want to do now is take you on a little tour of some of the active freelance action groups that do exist in the world, and we can see here a map of where we have active movements at the moment. We've got Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, France, Italy, and the US. So the European groups are all connected through a European-level meetup. Every couple of months, we get together and talk about what's going on. There was a meetup in Berlin a few weeks ago that I attended, and we communicate with the US group to some extent as well. So let's have a little tour of some of these active organizations, and we'll start right here in Germany, which is home to one of the youngest parts of the movement. It's called the Verband der Gründer und Selbstständigen Deutschland, which translates roughly to the Association of Founders and Freelancers Germany. The VGSD emerged in July last year in response to an online campaign to fight against a plan by the German government who wanted to introduce a compulsory tax on freelancers for their retirement. They wanted to tax freelancers 400 euros a month, regardless of their income. And this kind of flat tax would have been pretty much impossible for a lot of freelancers. So an online campaign was started, and with some campaigning help from the co-working community, it became quite successful. Some of you in this room probably took part and signed the online petition. And it was successful. The German government eventually dropped that plan, but we can be pretty sure that that plan is going to come back in some form or another in the near future. So a permanent body was formed out of that campaign to keep up the fight and to be ready for whatever comes next. So that's what the VGSD is. And so they've got a few key issues that they're going to fight for this year. They want to make healthcare costs more affordable for freelancers, and they want to tackle the dreaded TV license tax, which affects freelancers twice, once as individuals and once as a business. It's still a very young movement. There's only a couple of hundred members across Germany, but it's very active and it's growing. And they hold meetups in different cities around Germany. I'm the host of the Berlin meetup, and we have our next one on May 22nd if you'd like to take part. All right, let's go to the US. The US is home to one of the most effective and the largest freelancers movements. It's called the Freelancers Union. It was founded in New York in 2003. Of course, in the US, one of the biggest issues is healthcare and health insurance. So the Freelancers Union actually created their own health insurance company, and they opened their own clinics for their members to visit. Their founder is very big on the idea of what she calls new mutualism, which involves building community structures internally. They've also launched a few interesting and creative online campaigns, such as this one last year, which is called The World's Longest Invoice, where they were trying to basically calculate the amount that the corporate world owes the freelancers of America, and they got everybody to tally up all their unpaid invoices, and they came up with a figure of almost $16 million. So that's quite a creative little campaign. All right, so those are some official structures. Those are some real organizations that have founded. But in addition to the organizations, there's also a whole bunch of unofficial campaigns that are run that try and push the topic of freelancers' rights forward. And this is one from the UK. In the UK, there's a big problem with unpaid illegal internships. An unpaid internship is illegal in the UK, but it still happens a lot. So these two groups, Intern Aware and the Precarious Workers Brigade, they use social media to name and shame companies that use illegally unpaid interns. And they've been very successful, and they've actually managed to get a few of these interns back payment from the companies through their campaigns. Here's another informal online action. It's a really simple idea. It's a blog or a Tumblr blog called Who Pays Writers? And what they do is they encourage writers to publish how much they earn or how much they get paid by different publications. And this is addressing a really fundamental imbalance in the whole freelance employment market, and that is that the employers hold all the bargaining power because the freelancers often don't know how much they should be charging for their work. So just by simply encouraging people to tell how much they get paid, they're trying to address this imbalance. And we might see this kind of idea spread to other freelancing industries. All right, so I've given you a bit of a tour of the why and the how we got here and some of the actual active elements. There's a lot more, but I don't really have time to go through them all. But I'd like to give you my little glimpse of the future of the freelancers movement. So I see the movement growing into an anarchic, decentralized, yet interconnected network of different groups and campaigns around the world, which are all dedicated to giving freelancers a voice and bringing them together. It's going to use social media as its main form of communication. And the campaigns it launches are going to ooze with creativity because freelancers are creative people. It's going to tap into the skills of the freelance crowd because, let's face it, we're some of the most talented individuals out there. And it's also going to make use of the existing network of co-working spaces, which are going to become the physical nodes in the network of the freelancers movement. Okay, so in addition to all this, I'd like to end now by launching a new online platform that's dedicated to pushing this movement forward. It's called freelancersmovement.org, and it's an online news and information resource platform where we're going to basically document the movement as it goes forward and encourage it along. So we're going to use this platform also to launch a new upcoming ebook, which is called Independence Unite Inside the Freelancers' Rights Movement. It's being written by myself and by my colleague Anna Cashman, who's here today. This is Anna over here. She's been doing some great work lately on this whole topic, and we're going to be putting an ebook out on this, on basically what we've been talking about, and expand on all these points. So if you want to know more about the Freelancers' Rights Movement, please head to that website, stay informed, and yeah, hopefully we can see you taking part in the movement in the near future. And so with that, I'm going to hand over now to Matthias, who's going to tell us about a particular initiative that perhaps the freelancers movement can get behind. So thank you very much.